Mom left everything to my brother. She regretted it when I stopped helping. I discovered my mother signed everything over to my lazy brother, so I stopped the monthly checks that kept them afloat. When she called a month later, desperate and broke, my response changed everything. Sometimes I wonder how different life would have been if my father hadn't died that autumn morning. I was barely 7, but the memory stays sharp as broken glass. Dad was flipping pancakes, his Saturday tradition. He always made them extra fluffy and shaped them like Mickey Mouse ears, which made me shriek with laughter every single time. Mom was pouring orange juice, humming along to some Johnny Cash song on the radio. "Morgan, sweetheart, come grab the syrup for your old man," Dad called out, doing a little dance with a spatula. I hopped off the living room rug, leaving my favorite stuffed giraffe behind, and skipped toward the kitchen. That's when everything shattered. The spatula hit the linoleum floor. Dad grabbed his chest, his face going pale and twisted. What came next feels like watching someone else's nightmare. The wail of sirens, the bright hospital lights, Mom's mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. Just like that, my father was gone, leaving our house feeling too empty and too quiet. Mom didn't stay alone for long, though. She met Gerald at some grief counseling group for single parents. He seemed decent enough at first. Broad shoulders, warm laugh, gentle hands that reminded me faintly of Dad when he'd ruffle my hair. Within 8 months, they were married, and he moved into our 2-story colonial in the suburbs. I was still adjusting to calling someone else Dad when Mom dropped another bombshell. She was pregnant. I remember her eyes shining as she told me I'd be a big sister soon. I was 9 when Cody was born, and that's when my world tilted sideways. That's when Mom quit her job as a 3rd-grade teacher. "Cody needs me home," she'd explain whenever relatives questioned her decision. These first few years shape everything about who a child becomes. I wanted to ask if my first years hadn't mattered, if they hadn't been worth her time. But the words never made it past my throat. Instead, I watched Mom's universe slowly shrink until Cody became the sun and everything else orbited around him. She'd forget to sign my permission slips for field trips, then look shocked when I brought it up at dinner. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry," she'd say, already glancing back at Cody. I was swamped with Cody's pediatrician appointment this morning. It wasn't a one-time thing. It became our reality. Gerald noticed. I'd catch him watching Mom with worried eyes as she fussed over Cody, completely ignoring me across the dinner table. One night, while I sat alone struggling through math homework, he pulled up a chair beside me. "You know, Morgan," he said softly, helping me work through fractions. "Sometimes people get so focused on one thing that they can't see what's right in front of them." As Cody got older, the tension in our house became impossible to ignore. Gerald tried talking to Mom dozens of times about her obsession with Cody, but every conversation ended the same way, with Mom getting defensive and furious. I remember one specific evening when Gerald brought it up over dinner. Cody was about 6, pushing his chicken nuggets around his plate while Mom hovered over him, trying to coax him into eating just one more piece. "Linda," Gerald said, setting down his knife. "We need to talk about this. You can't keep babying him like this. He needs to learn independence." Mom's expression immediately hardened. "What are you implying? That I'm a bad mother?" "That's not what I'm saying, and you know it," Gerald replied, keeping his tone even. "But you've got 2 kids here, not 1. And a husband, for that matter." I pretended to be fascinated by my green beans, but I was hanging on every word. "Cody needs me," Mom snapped. "He's still so little." I was little too, I whispered under my breath, but nobody seemed to hear me. Things came to a head when Gerald suggested signing Cody up for Little League Baseball. I was sitting on the staircase, supposedly doing homework, when I heard them fighting in the kitchen. "Absolutely not," Mom's voice was shrill. "Do you have any idea how dangerous baseball is? He could get hit by a ball or break his arm sliding into base. For God's sake, Linda, he needs to experience childhood. You can't bubble wrap him forever." But Mom wouldn't budge. Instead, she enrolled Cody in weekend art classes at the community center. I still remember Cody's bored face as he sat there half-heartedly dabbing paint on canvas while other kids actually seemed to enjoy themselves. He quit after 2 sessions, and Mom blamed the teacher for not recognizing her son's creative genius. Meanwhile, Gerald started spending more time with me. Maybe it was his way of balancing Mom's behavior. Maybe he just saw a kid who needed someone in her corner. He'd drive me to my dance classes twice a week, sitting through every rehearsal, clapping louder than any other parent when I performed in recitals. But while I was thriving under Gerald's attention, Cody was becoming increasingly difficult. He'd trash his room, leaving toys and clothes everywhere, and Mom would turn to me with that look I'd learned to dread. "Morgan, be a sweetheart and tidy up Cody's room," she'd say, not asking, but ordering. One afternoon, Gerald caught wind of this arrangement. "She's not his maid, Linda," he protested. "He needs to learn responsibility." That's when Mom burst into tears, pulling out her nuclear option. "I knew it. You love her more than your own son. How can you treat Cody this way?" I watched Gerald's face crumble, saw the fight drain from his body. He looked at me apologetically, then raised his hands in defeat. "Fine, whatever you want," he said quietly, walking away. After that, he stopped arguing with Mom about Cody, but the look he gave me said everything. He hadn't given up on me, even if he'd given up on fighting with Mom. It was a small comfort, but sometimes small comforts are all we have. High school graduation day was bittersweet. As I stood in my cap and gown, scanning the bleachers, I spotted Gerald grinning proudly. Mom was there too, but she kept glancing at her phone, probably checking in with Cody's babysitter. That evening, Gerald called me into his home office. "I've been putting money aside," he said, spreading out a folder full of college brochures. "You can go anywhere you want, Morgan. Your choice." Before I could respond, Mom burst through the door. "You can't be serious," she exclaimed. "That money should go toward Cody's future. He's going to need it more." Gerald's jaw set, an expression I'd grown familiar with during these battles. "This isn't up for discussion, Linda. I've already decided." I ended up choosing University of Colorado in Boulder, far enough to start fresh, but close enough that I could visit if I wanted to. The day Gerald helped me move into my dorm, Mom couldn't come because Cody had separation anxiety about her leaving. College life was everything I needed. For the first time, I felt free from the shadow of being the forgotten child. I called home every week, but my conversations were mostly with Gerald. Mom was always too busy with Cody. "Your brother's going through a rough patch," Gerald explained during one of our calls, his voice sounding exhausted. "He's running around with these sketchy kids from across town. I tried getting him into some after-school activities, but your mother—" "Let me guess," I interrupted. "She said you were being too controlling." "Exactly. Called me a dictator for suggesting he might need some discipline." Gerald sighed heavily. "She says I don't understand how delicate he is." My trips home became less frequent as Cody's behavior got worse. When I did visit, he barely acknowledged me, locked in his room with his Xbox. The few times I saw him, he looked pale and sullen, his eyes glued to various screens. After graduation, I landed a position at Adobe in their marketing department. I stayed in Colorado building my career while watching from a distance as my brother sank deeper into his self-imposed isolation. During one of my rare visits home, I tried knocking on his door. "Cody, want to grab coffee?" "My treat." All I got was the sound of explosions from whatever game he was playing. Mom, passing by in the hallway, just shrugged. "He's not in a social mood today. He's very anxious, you know." The contrast between our lives couldn't have been more striking. While I was climbing the corporate ladder, Cody was collecting virtual trophies, enabled by Mom's endless excuses. Gerald's disappointed expression said everything. But by then, even he had mostly given up on trying to change things. By 28, I'd finally saved enough for a down payment on my own place. It wasn't massive, just a 2-bedroom townhouse in a nice neighborhood, but it was mine. The day I got the keys, I couldn't stop grinning. All those years of saving, of brown bag lunches and saying no to expensive clothes, had finally paid off. "You all need to come see it," I said during my weekly call home. "I'm throwing a housewarming party next Saturday. I'll cook dinner, Gerald. I'm even making your favorite pot roast." "Wouldn't miss it for the world, kiddo," Gerald replied warmly. Mom's voice cut in on the other line. "Oh, sweetie, I don't think we can make it. Cody has plans that day." "Plans?" I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. "What kind of plans?" "Very important ones," Mom said vaguely. I could hear Cody's video game blaring in the background. The day of the housewarming, only Gerald showed up. He brought a succulent plant and a bottle of Cabernet. "Your mother sends her love," he said, but we both knew that was a lie. Over dinner, Gerald filled me in on what was really happening at home. Cody, now 21, hadn't bothered with college and spent his days either gaming or hanging out with his drinking buddies. Gerald had tried to help, offering him an entry-level position at his contracting company. You know, Gerald explained, cutting into his pot roast. Everyone has to start somewhere. But Linda. He shook his head. Linda said it would be beneath him. Said Cody was too smart for construction work. Too smart to work, but not too smart to mooch off his parents, I muttered. Gerald gave me a sad smile. I keep trying, Morgan. God knows I keep trying. That was our last real conversation. 18 months later, I got the call that shattered everything. Gerald had collapsed at a job site. Massive heart attack, just like my father. By the time I made it to the hospital, he was gone. The funeral was surreal. Mom put on quite a performance, crying dramatically and telling anyone who'd listen what a wonderful husband Gerald had been. We were so happy, she wailed. How will we survive without him? I watched her act with a mixture of disgust and sadness. Her tears weren't for Gerald, they were for herself. I could see the calculations behind her grief-stricken mask. Gerald had been the sole breadwinner. Without his income, how would she maintain Cody in the lifestyle he'd grown accustomed to? Cody didn't even bother wearing a proper suit to the funeral. He showed up in wrinkled khakis and a polo shirt that looked like he'd slept in it. He spent most of the service staring at his phone while Mom made excuses for him. His processing his grief differently. Standing there at Gerald's grave, I couldn't help but think about how history had repeated itself. Another father figure, another heart attack, another funeral. Only this time, I was old enough to see everything clearly, including the fact that Mom's tears were more about her finances than her broken heart. A year after Gerald's death, I'd mostly lost contact with Mom and Cody. What little I knew came from Aunt Diane's occasional updates. They're living off Gerald's life insurance, she told me. Your mom sold his Chevy Silverado last month. The power tools from his garage went before that. I tried not to care. I really did. But when Mom's number lit up my phone one Thursday evening, my heart still jumped. Morgan. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. I need you to come home, please. Something in her tone made me book a flight for the next day. When I pulled up to our old house, I barely recognized it. The once perfect lawn Gerald had lovingly maintained was overrun with weeds. Paint was peeling from the window frames, and one of the shutters hung at an angle. But the house wasn't the only thing that had aged badly. Mom opened the door, and I had to suppress a gasp. The vibrant woman I remembered had been replaced by someone who looked decades older than her actual age. Deep lines creased her face, and her hair, which she'd always kept perfectly colored and styled, showed stark gray roots. Come in, she said, leading me into the living room. The house smelled stale, and dishes were stacked in the sink. A thin layer of dust covered everything. This from the woman who used to make me re-clean bathrooms if she spotted a single streak. Mom, what's going on? I asked, settling onto the couch. A spring poked into my leg. Another thing Gerald would have fixed immediately. She broke down almost instantly. We're running out of money, Morgan. My pension barely covers the utilities, and the life insurance. She twisted her hands in her lap. It's almost gone. What about Cody? Is he contributing to expenses? Mom's face did this complicated dance between shame and defensiveness. His job hunting. It's not his fault. These employers just don't appreciate him. The last place wanted him to start at 6 in the morning. You know Cody's not a morning person. And the one before that expected him to do physical labor, with his intelligence. I felt my jaw clenching. Mom, he's 23. At his age and with no experience, he can't exactly be picky about. You don't understand, she cut me off, her voice rising to that familiar pitch that always preceded a Cody defense. Then abruptly, her tone shifted. Morgan, we need your help. We won't make it without you. I hate to ask, but you're doing so well in your career. I knew what was coming. Part of me wanted to refuse, to remind her of all the times she chose Cody over me. But looking at her worn face, the trembling hands, the desperate eyes, I couldn't. How much do you need? When she said $2,000 per month, I nearly choked. That was a huge chunk of my salary, but I found myself nodding anyway. Where's Cody now? I asked as I prepared to leave, already second-guessing my decision. "Oh, he's at a job interview," Mom brightened slightly. "A very promising position with a software company." Through the window, I could see Cody's bedroom light on and the familiar glow of his computer screen. Some things never changed. True to my word, I set up an automatic transfer of $2,000 to Mom's account every month. Each time I saw that deduction from my bank balance, I told myself it was the right thing to do, even if it meant postponing my own plans for a bigger place or a reliable car. I started visiting more frequently, though each visit felt like stepping into a time warp. Cody was always there, either glued to his computer screen or sprawled on the couch with a beer in hand. "How's the job search going?" I'd ask. "Mind your own damn business," he'd snap, or sometimes just grunt and turn up the volume on his game. During the holidays, I couldn't stand seeing the living room in such disrepair. The paint was chipping, and there was a water stain on the ceiling that would have driven Gerald crazy. So I spent my Christmas bonus hiring contractors to fix everything. When Mom twisted her ankle in March, I called to check on her. "Oh, it's not terrible," she said, though I could hear the pain in her voice. "Is Cody helping you out?" "He's busy with some virtual interviews." I hired a home health aide the next day. The money I'd been saving for a trip to Europe went to cover her wages for the next month. Then came the day I walked into the house and found a stranger draped across our couch. She looked like she'd walked off a reality TV set. Fake nails that could double as weapons, heavy makeup, and clothes that screamed for attention. She was scrolling through her phone, surrounded by empty chip bags and energy drink cans. "Who are you?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. Cody emerged from his room. "This is Kayla," he announced. "My fiancée. She lives here now." Kayla didn't even glance up from her phone, just popped her gum loudly. I watched in disbelief as she reached into the grocery bag I'd just brought and helped herself to the gourmet chocolates I'd bought for Mom. "Nice to meet you too," I muttered under my breath. Later that evening, I called Mom to get her perspective on the situation. "Oh, Morgan," she sounded more excited than I'd heard her in months. "Isn't it wonderful? Cody's finally settling down. Kayla's been such a positive influence on him. He hasn't gone out drinking with those terrible friends in weeks." "That's because she's drinking all my craft beer at home," I thought, remembering the empty bottles I'd spotted in the recycling bin. "And his talking about getting a job," Mom continued enthusiastically. "Kayla's cousin knows someone at a tech startup. Cody says it could be his big opportunity." I made non-committal sounds while thinking about the dozens of big opportunities Cody had mentioned over the years. But Mom was so happy, living in her world of eternal optimism, that I didn't have the heart to shatter it. My next visit home started like any other. I balanced grocery bags as I pushed open the front door, only to freeze in my tracks. The house looked like a hurricane had ripped through it. Dirty dishes piled high in the sink, takeout containers littered every surface, and clothes were scattered across the living room floor. Kayla lay sprawled on the couch, perfectly manicured nails tapping away at her phone screen. She didn't even acknowledge me as I set down the groceries. "You know," I said, my voice sharp, "you live here rent-free, eating food that I pay for. The least you could do is wash a dish or two." She looked up slowly, a smirk playing across her heavily glossed lips. "Who do you think you are to come in here giving orders? This isn't your house." "I grew up here," I shot back. "You're just a guest." That's when she laughed, a harsh, triumphant sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh, honey, you've got it all wrong. This house belongs to Cody now. Your mom signed everything over to him. There's a will and everything." I found Mom in the kitchen clipping coupons she never used. "Is it true?" My voice sounded strange in my own ears. "Did you make a will leaving everything to Cody?" She wouldn't meet my eyes at first, fiddling with the papers in front of her. Then something seemed to harden in her expression. "Yes," she said flatly. "It's true." "I don't understand." The words came out barely above a whisper. "I'm the one helping you. I'm the one sending money every month. Cody doesn't work, doesn't contribute anything." "Don't you dare talk about your brother that way," Mom's voice rose sharply. "You don't understand him. You never have." "Understand what?" "That is a parasite who's perfectly content to live off my money while his girlfriend destroys our home." "Oh, stop being so melodramatic." Mom's face twisted into something I didn't recognize. "You want to know the truth? I never loved you the way I love Cody. He's better than you in every way that matters. And I don't want to see you here anymore. The words hit like physical blows. All these years, I told myself that Mom did love me, just differently. That somewhere beneath her obsession with Cody, she cared about me too. Now I knew better. I turned and walked out, Kayla's triumphant laughter following me down the hall. 22 years of hoping, of making excuses, of trying to earn my mother's love, all of it ended with the quiet click of a door closing behind me. The drive home from Mom's house was a blur. I don't remember the 5-hour trip, don't remember climbing the stairs to my townhouse, don't even remember sitting down on my couch. But I do remember the moment of clarity that came as I stared at my phone's banking app. The automatic transfer to Mom's account, $2,000 every month for the past year and a half. My finger hovered over the screen for a moment before I decisively clicked cancel recurring payment. For the next few weeks, I threw myself into work, trying to ignore the hole in my budget that suddenly felt like an opportunity rather than a burden. I started researching investment options for the money I'd been sending home. Maybe I could finally start saving for a real house, not just a townhouse. Then, exactly 1 month after my last visit home, Mom called. The money didn't come through, she said without preamble. No hello, no how are you, just straight to business. There must be some mistake with the bank. There's no mistake, I replied, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. I cancelled the transfers. There was a moment of stunned silence before she exploded. You what? How dare you? After everything I've done for you. I actually laughed at that. Everything you've done for me? Like what, Mom? Forgetting I existed, forcing me to be Cody's servant, telling me you never loved me. That's different. You know I was upset. But you can't just stop helping us. We're counting on that money. Cody and Kayla are planning a trip to Cancun. They need a vacation. I interrupted, my voice rising. Cody needs a vacation from what exactly? Playing video games? Drinking beer? Let me tell you something, Mom, Cody doesn't need a vacation. He needs a job. How dare you speak about your brother that way? You're just jealous because... Because what? Because you left everything to him? Fine. You made your choice. Now he can take care of you. You ungrateful, selfish little. The rest of her tirade dissolved into a stream of accusations and demands. I let her rant for a moment before speaking again. Goodbye, Mom. Don't call me again. I blocked her number before she could respond. But Mom wasn't done. Over the next few weeks, the messages started flooding in through every possible channel. Facebook messages about how she was struggling to pay bills, Instagram comments about what a terrible daughter I was, emails detailing all the sacrifices she'd made for me, most of which I couldn't remember actually happening. Cody joined in too, sending aggressive texts about how I was destroying the family. Mom's crying because of you, he wrote. You better start sending money again, or else. I blocked him too, but not before replying, here's a crazy idea, try getting a job. Kayla even tried reaching out through LinkedIn, of all places, with a long message about how I was breaking my poor mother's heart and how Cody was too sensitive to handle the stress of work right now. I had to admire her creativity, at least. It's been 7 months now. I don't know how they're doing, and for the first time in my life, I don't feel guilty about that. Maybe they finally realized that Cody needs to support himself. Maybe they're still waiting for me to cave and start sending money again. Maybe they found someone else to manipulate. The truth is, I don't need to know. What I do know is that the $2,000 I used to send them every month has gone into a down payment fund for my own house. I know that I sleep better at night, no longer jolted awake by angry messages or guilt-tripping calls. I know that Gerald would be proud of me for finally standing up for myself. The other day, I drove past a construction site and saw a now hiring sign. For a moment, I thought about taking a picture and sending it to Cody, but then I just smiled and kept driving. Their problems aren't my problems anymore. Finally, after all these years, I'm free.